I was an area manager at a fulfillment center introducing lithium battery products. I realized our normal dangerous goods checklist was insufficient when two carriers interpreted the same battery classification differently. I needed enough subject matter expertise to launch safely and avoid rejected trailers, without pretending to become a regulatory lawyer. I could delegate the issue to compliance, pause the range indefinitely, or build operational expertise with expert validation and controlled trials. I completed carrier and regulatory training, shadowed a dangerous goods specialist, read the applicable packing instructions, and converted the requirements into decisions by battery type, watt-hour rating, and transport mode. I created a validated product matrix, trained 12 receiving and shipping leads, and required a 2-person check for classification and labels during the first 4 weeks. Commercial teams wanted one rule for all batteries. I demonstrated why damaged returns and standalone batteries required different containment and escalations. A pilot found product data missing watt-hour values on 8% of listings. I blocked those items, added a supplier data requirement, and created an exception route instead of asking operators to infer values. Before closing the action, I sampled performance across different shifts and demand conditions, so the result did not depend on one unusually experienced team or a quiet operating window. I translated the outcome into a simple frontline mechanism with a named owner, an escalation threshold, and a weekly measure, which made the change repeatable after I stepped away. I also documented the operating assumptions, named the owner for each follow-up action, and set a clear review date so that temporary controls could not quietly become permanent. I wrote the decision, assumptions, owners, and stop conditions on a 1-page control plan so the next shift could challenge the logic rather than rely on verbal context. I used both a leading indicator and a customer outcome measure that prevented a short-term productivity improvement from hiding quality, safety, or backlog age. During implementation, I stayed at the operating point for the first cycle, asked frontline employees what the mechanism missed, and changed only one variable at a time. I assigned named owners for each checkpoint and made escalation thresholds visible in the shift huddle, which reduced ambiguity when I was not physically present. After stabilization, I compared the result with the original baseline, checked for cost or defect displacement, and documented the mechanism for the other shifts. Before committing, I asked a supervisor who disagreed with me to identify the weakest assumption, then converted that concern into a measurable checkpoint rather than relying on consensus. I separated mandatory controls from preferences, which let the team move quickly without weakening the safety, quality, or customer promise that the operation existed to protect. For each alternative, I estimated the likely customer impact, labor requirement, operational reversibility, and worst credible failure, and I explained why my chosen path offered the best balance. I briefed affected teams before launch, checked understanding through questions rather than attendance, and made the escalation route clear to people working outside my shift. I also protected normal operations by defining which work would pause, which work would continue, and who could authorize expansion beyond the initial controlled scope. At every review point, I compared actual performance with the assumption that justified the decision. When they diverged, I changed the plan rather than defending the original recommendation. I made the cost of the choice visible as well as the benefit, because hiding overtime, rework, or displaced backlog would have made the result look stronger but less useful. Once the immediate issue was resolved, I held a short review with frontline representatives and partner teams, captured what failed in the original mechanism, and assigned permanent actions. We launched 1,400 products with 0 safety events or carrier rejections. Receiving exceptions fell from 8% to 0.7%, and the matrix became the network standard. I build expertise by learning enough to make sound operational decisions, translating it into mechanisms, and retaining expert challenge where the consequence demands it. I would involve supplier management earlier.